This was one of the most intense trips I've ever been on.
Oh, that's not good.
Being dropped off in the midst of a snowstorm would be a challenge, and doing it without any gear, well, I just had no idea of how much this would push both my mind and body. The plan was to simulate being caught in a snowstorm. I could prepare my skills under ideal conditions, but what would it actually be like to be out there? What kind of reality would that be?
My jacket is completely soaked through. My down layer is pretty much soaked through, and I got probably 4 hours of light.
So I didn't check the weather exactly. Instead, I just waited for a winter blizzard warning and went in blind. But that's not to say that I went in a t-shirt and jeans. I took with me my best outdoor clothing, the stuff I would wear if I was out on a day snowshoeing or winter hiking. I generally wear a 2 base layer system, the first one being merino wool mesh, and over top of that, a standard weave merino wool. I like zippers on the trousers so that I could remove them and still keep my boots on in the winter time if I'm overheating. And if I stop moving or get too cold, I could similarly put them back on without taking my boots off. The arms have holes for your thumbs so it covers part of your hand, and a quarter zip on the neckline so you could always ventilate if you're overheating and air out fast. The outdoors pants I'm using are made of a stretchy, soft shell. Along with being highly water resistant and breathable, they also have these side vents. These are really good so you could air out when you're doing heavy activity and so you don't overheat. Most importantly, they're stretchy, and that allows me to do all the different movements that I need to do in bushcraft and survival. As my mid layer, I have a 650 fill down. I chose this because down is extremely popular, and while normally I wear wool, I wanted to see exactly what the limits of this would be in a true survival situation. On top of that, I have my absolute favorite layer. This is my anorak. The key points are it's long enough to cover all the layers below, it's loose fitting so it doesn't compress the down and then reduce the insulation value of it, and it's made of a material which you could wax to make it waterproof or leave it unwaxed and have it more breathable. The trade-off is it's less water resistant. I left it unwaxed just to see what it could take, which ended up being a nearly fatal mistake. Along with my belt and pack pouch, I brought insulated work gloves to handle the camera, but I always prefer mitts in the winter for keeping your hands warm. These ones are moose hide with removable wool liners, a winter hat to cover my ears, and my cold weather hiking boots. I use a really unique setup for my socks, with some merino wool toe socks first and then the wools over top. I find this works to keep my toes the warmest. Now if I'm going to be in deep snow, I could zip my pants over top of these boots, or if I'm hiking and want to ventilate so my feet don't sweat, I'll just leave them open. The key to warmth in my whole setup is that nothing is tight and squished. I have a slight wiggle room in my boots as well as in all my layers. They all work together. The hood on my anorak can go over all the layers, and the bottom trim extends past all of them, as well as on my hands. And now the adventure begins. I get a lift and I'm dropped off in the woods at midday, just as the snowstorm's about to come in. As always, I have an emergency pack with an extra wool sweater, water, and ferro rod. All of these things are a last resort, and I hope to not have to dig into it. If I absolutely need to, I could hike out a few kilometers to safety, but for now, I have to navigate and find out where I am.
Alright, this is going to be my navigation. Basically building a compass just from this, so I can track which direction I'm going, so I know how to find my way out. Sharp stick. Okay, you can see sort of a circle there. Imagine this as a clock. Here we have 12, that's noon. Here we have 6 p.m., 3, and 9. Now what I want to do is find exactly where the sun is. It's really hard to do today because it's overcast. I could see it poking through, and it's about that direction over there. I find my 12 o'clock mark, and I find whatever time it is now. Right now it's 11:50. That being said, Imagine the big hand on a clock is right here at 11:50. I now point the 11:50 towards the sun, halfway between that direction and 12 noon is due south. Another example of this, let's say it was 3 o'clock p.m. right now. That means 3 o'clock would be over here and 12 o'clock would be here. What I would do is tilt this and point 3 o'clock at the sun. Now exactly halfway between 12 noon and 3 o'clock, which would be there, that's due south. That's an example. But right now, because it's 12 o'clock noon, pretty much exactly where 12 is, you point that at the sun and that's due south. If I want to take a bearing and I want to head that way, I place my map like this and I know I'm heading exactly north. Now what I want to do is pick a landmark back in the distance and head towards that. When I get there, I want to look back at exactly where I started, this big old birch tree, and take a bearing again and make sure I'm heading in the same line and continue doing that so I could always find my way out. At the same time, I'm going to be breaking branches at the tip, and that'll mark my path because it's going to be snowing and it's going to cover every single thing, every path I make. This is how you do navigation, making a compass in the wilderness by using the sun and the time. In this case, this birch bark. I'm going to be traveling north, heading that way. All right, with the snowstorm coming in, I need to find shelter as fast as I can, and I need to get a fire started. Basically, with the winds and the blizzard that's expected, I don't know if I'll be able to keep a fire going all night under something exposed. So what I'm gonna do here is try to build a fire against this rock, and I'll get a big fire going as long as I can, and that'll heat up the rock if I get it big enough, and it'll heat up the ground. I'll slowly move that dirt over to here and keep burning into the ground, and then hopefully my plan is to bury all the coals and then create a shelter of just sticks going over top, so then I could lie down against this rock for warmth behind me. I could shelter from the big winds that are coming with the sticks going this way, and the ground will hopefully be decently warm throughout at least most of the night. I don't have any tools. I don't have a knife, I don't have a saw, I don't have an axe. Very little options here. Sometimes the only dry wood to be found is going to be under canopies like this. So everything in these conditions are going to be pretty tough. I've got to get tons of small little tinder bundles going, everything from matchstick size all the way up to pencil size. Once I have my smaller bundles, I'll then move on to larger and larger ones. I've got to get this fire going without having to go back and collect more. It's got to be self-sustaining because this snow is going to put it out pretty fast. And if I leave it alone to go collect more wood, I'll be in trouble. Not only will the fire go out and I'll have to regather materials, but it'll be extremely demoralizing. And honestly, for me, one of the worst things about doing any kind of survival is when demoralizing things happen. It's just so hard to push through. And that's kind of what it's all about. Eventually, you gain the strength to push through. Most of the times, people are capable of way more than they think they are. So these little trips like this, they sort of test that and then give you confidence. But it doesn't change the fact that every single time it's demoralizing. It doesn't change that. So, I know that's happened to me before, so I'm going to try to mitigate that as much as I can. It's not that cold out. It's probably just a little bit above or right around 0 degrees. What I'm gonna do is take off my down jacket underneath because I don't want to risk that getting wet from me sweating underneath, or just whenever I put my hood on or off. I don't want this to be wet for when I go to sleep. It'll be right around my neck. As you can see, the back of this jacket is all wet, but oh, that's not good. That's not good. So down loses all of its insulative value when it's wet. So this is not going to be much help to me tonight. So remember when I said about the demoralizing things? It's a bit dangerous. I gotta really do this properly, because you don't want to be wet overnight. You'll freeze, and the inside of this jacket is completely wet right now.
At this point, I was fairly defeated and seriously considered my backup plan in hiking out to safety. But there was one more option. It was a long shot, but last year I'd constructed a bear den style survival shelter on the edge of this very property. It would be a few kilometers east of where I was, but it would be my only real chance. I made it with only a knife and used spruce roots to bind the supports together, so I had no idea if it was even still standing. And besides that, going there would take me even farther from my possible emergency exit. In real survival situations like this, there's no easy decisions. You just have to go with your best odds and rely on your knowledge and training, and above all, never give up hope. So with only 4 hours of light remaining, I've now got to navigate the approximate direction of that shelter, and then start a few kilometer hike, all while trying to film and keep my camera dry. This would not be easy.
Alright, here's our navigation map. Here's our very rough watch face. What I want to find is east. So I'm going to check the time. It's now about 1 o'clock. So if that's our watch, 12:03, that means that's 2 and that's 1. The time that it is right now, it's 1 o'clock. Point that at the sun. The sun is in that direction. That's 12 right there. So halfway between 1 o'clock pointing at the sun and 12 o'clock, halfway in between there is south. So I know now this direction, south, north, west, east. So I need to travel there, that direction, to find approximately where my shelter was. So there's a ridge there, and I built the shelter at the bottom, kind of like where I am now, the bottom of that ridge. I'm just gonna keep the bottom of this ridge, and that's hopefully gonna be my guideline. I'll have to, every 100 steps, look back and make sure that I'm heading east. Not only that, but that I've come from exactly west. That means that I'm traveling in a straight line. So this is gonna be a bit difficult, but it is my only option right now. Okay, that way. Yes! Oh. Yeah! Oh man, this really saved me. It is nice and dry in here, and it's got the old pine boughs for a nice cozy bed and my little fireplace. Wow! Yeah! My jacket's soaked. Brutal. So this was absolutely needed. But the work is not done yet. I've still got to dry out my clothes in this fire and collect firewood, find something to get some drinking water, because you can't eat snow. It makes you even more dehydrated. But I'm glad this shelter is held up. My gosh, that's so nice. All right, let's get to it. Now this is just a prime example of why clothing selection is really important. Generally I like to wear wool because wool, if it gets wet, it retains a lot of its insulation value. Down on the other hand, if it gets wet, it loses all of it. This climate is really, really unpredictable. What ended up happening is it's actually wet snow and sometimes rain. So all my gear is getting soaked. Right now I'm completely drenched. My top half is just drenched. My bottom half, luckily, I have a soft shell on, which protects me from getting wet. And I have the vents at the side, so sweat hasn't been an issue. I haven't been getting wet at all by sweat. It's just this wet rain that keeps coming and interchanging with snow. So what can you do in these cold situations like that? There's not really much. I have 2 hours of sun left. I know that because if I look at approximately where the sun is, I could stick my hand out at arm's length just like this, and each finger represents about 15 minutes, and I could flip it up and I could see that's about an hour, 2 hours and a half tops before the sun is setting below that hill and it's going to be dark. So all I could do right now is keep active. If I stop, if I slow down, I'm going to get cold. I'm just going to keep processing and grabbing firewood, stocking up that shelter, and then I'm going to start a fire, get warm, strip down off of all my wet clothing, and put on my emergency stuff, which is wool felt. So thank God I have that. It's always important to come prepared. You never know when unexpected things are going to happen. And probably one of the most important things is knowing how to deal with it when it comes. So no doubt this is going to be a freezing cold night, but I'm preparing to survive it, not be comfortable through it. Piling up a whole bunch of big dead trees just in case I run out of wood inside in the night and I'm getting cold. I could come out here, expend some energy, and I don't have to travel in the dark. I got all my wood right here. So for the next few hours I'm just going to be doing this, piling up and stockpiling wood. In my pack pouch I still got that birch bark from earlier, so I'm hoping that I will light easy. And again, you never know. I've got to make sure I have about an hour left of light before I start my fire. The last thing I want is to wait for it to get dark and then realize I can't get one started, because then I'm in real trouble. So that if I get in a real tricky situation, I could still make it out before dark. Hoping to break off little pieces of this. Might be kind of hard to do. Everything's easier with the saw and axe. No, I don't think this one's gonna go. Too big. Try this one. There we go. Perfect. Here's a quick behind the scenes with my camera friend. This is all I got. And she's on her last leg. Chimney hole should be somewhere around here. Oh, here it is. Clear off as much moisture as I can. Get the snow out. It's gonna be hard enough to get a fire going as it is, let alone keep a fire going. All right, time to go in and light this fire. All right, I got my pack pouch filled with just a whole bunch of birch bark. That's a bit hard to see, but I'm gonna try my best to start fire with this ferro rod. So I've got to heat it up to the right temperature before I could even catch. It's very hard to do in the winter. Come on. Ooh. It's getting warmer, that's good. Just give it consistent sparks until it goes. There we go, come on. Yes. Please burn. Yes, baby. Okay, we need to get this to the back so I don't get smoked out. But the back is pure ice and snow. It's my one shot at birch bark, so I'm really hoping this goes. Save these kind of little pieces, but you saw how hard that was to even get going in the first place. Look at that. Okay, here's my pack pouch. This is the only way I could think of getting water in a pinch right now. I don't really have birch bark. I couldn't find a source other than the stuff I collected earlier, or else I'd try to make a birch bark container to melt the snow. But for now, I'm just gonna have to use my pack pouch. It's waxed canvas, And that wax is actually beeswax. And stick this bad boy right there. And that'll start heating up and melting that snow inside. With a little bit of luck, I'll have some water in there because water can't come through the canvas. I don't have much room in here, but I'm gonna try my best to take off my wet clothing and switch to my emergency layers, which are wool. Let's do that. Good news is it's really toasty in here. Bad news is all my layers are soaked. Absolutely soaked. And if I didn't have any change, I could risk hypothermia very, very easily. This down right here is completely soaked. I mean, it doesn't do anything but suck heat from me. Even my base layers are all wet. So I'll have to take these off and dry them off by the fire. Here's my emergency layer. It's nice wool. So I'm gonna take off this mesh base layer. And this all should be doable tonight safely. Okay. It's nice to get in some warm clothes, I'll tell you that much. Wow. That's real nice. Got some nice cacciatore. I brought some dough. This dough, I'm just gonna wrap around this stick here. There we go. When I was making to the shelter, I was kind of afraid that the snow would be melting on top and just be dripping on my head all night. But as I made this thing, I put bark and I layered it as if they were shingles. So there's not many drips, if any. There's definitely a couple, but it's not at all a big deal. All right. It's looking pretty good. One side got annihilated. Just burned to a crisp. But this side looks pretty good. It melted all the snow nicely. So it should be somewhat drinkable now. And keep note, this is just for emergencies. This is not my preferred way of drinking water. Tastes good. Don't want to waste it all, but so you can see. Update on the drying of the jacket. This anorak I have is incredible because, yes, it's not completely waterproof as we saw today, but it dries really, really fast. So it's nearly completely dry right now. My wool mesh, completely dry. The down though, that will not dry overnight. If I'm doing camping or anything where I risk being in a survival situation, I'll generally go for wool over down. The burnt bit is really burnt. So it is around 4:20 right now. Still light out. Still snowing really good. Constantly snowing and raining all day. Just rough conditions. So I'm just gonna go get more wood after this. Get more snow to boil some more water, hydrate up. And then I'm just gonna feed the fire a bunch and
and get through the night. That was rough. It was real rough. I won't say I had any real good sleep, but I did survive. It was not comfortable, but I did survive. It's like the old saying, everyone has a plan until you get hit in the face. And it's exactly that when you come out and do these bushcraft and survival trips. I feel like if you have more gear, you could stick to your plan a bit easier. But when you do things with a bare minimum, you really, really have to adapt, and rarely does it go according to the plan you had at the beginning. And in this case, absolutely nothing went according to my plan. And that's a lot of the fun of it, and that's a lot of the challenge of it. So anyways, thank you for coming along on this journey with me. I'm gonna start getting back. I'm your friend DJ from the Bare Essentials, and thanks for stopping by.